instructions, and he vowed to do just that. Finally, on the third stop, a Waku deckhand ordered Leto to descend 3 decks and board an automatic shuttle. She was a stern-looking woman in a gaudy uniform, and did not seem to be in the mood for conversation. Her headset thrummed with an undercurrent of melody. "Is this Ix?" Leto inquired, reaching for his suspensor-buoyed suitcases. They followed him as he moved. "We are in the Alkarop system," she said. Her eyes couldn't be seen because of her dark glasses. "Ix is the 9th planet. You get off here. We've already jettisoned the dump boxes." Leto did as he was instructed, making his way toward the indicated shuttle, though he wished he had been given more warning and more information. He didn't know exactly what he was supposed to do once he arrived on the high-tech industrial world, but he assumed Earl Vernius would greet him, or at least send some sort of welcoming party. He took a deep breath and tried not to let his anxiety grow too intense. The robo-piloted shuttle plummeted out of the Highliner hold toward the surface of a planet traced with mountains, clouds, and ice. The automated shuttle functioned according to a limited set of instructions, and conversation wasn't in its repertoire of skills. Leto was the only passenger aboard, apparently the only traveler bound for Ix. The machine planet welcomed few visitors. As he looked out the porthole, though, Leto had a sinking feeling that something had gone wrong. The Waku shuttle approached a high mountain plateau with alpine forests and sheltered valleys. He saw no buildings, none of the grand structures or manufacturing facilities he had expected. No smoke in the air, no cities, no sign of civilization at all. This couldn't possibly be the heavily industrialized world of Ix. He looked around, tensing up, ready to defend himself. Had he been betrayed? Lured here and stranded? The shuttle came to a stop on a stark plain strewn with flecked granite boulders and small clumps of white flowers. "This is where you get out, sir," the robo-pilot announced in a synthesized voice. "Where are we?" Leto demanded. "I'm supposed to be going to the capital of Ix." "This is where you get out, sir." "Answer me." His father would have used a booming voice to wrench a reply from this stupid machine. "This can't be the capital city of Ix. Just look around you." "You have 10 seconds to exit the craft, sir, or you will be forcibly ejected. The Guild operates on a tight schedule. The Highliner is already prepared to depart for the next system." Cursing under his breath, Leto nudged his drifting luggage and stepped onto the rubble-strewn surface. Within seconds, the white, bullet-shaped craft rose and dwindled to a pinpoint of orange light in the sky, before it disappeared from view entirely. His pair of suitcases hovered beside him, and a clean-smelling wind ruffled his hair. Leto was alone. "Hello?" he shouted, but no one answered. He shivered as he stared at rugged mountain ridges dusted with snow and glacial ice. Caladan, mostly an ocean world, had very few mountains approaching this grandeur. But he had not come to see mountains. "Hello! I'm Leto Atreides from Caladan," he called out. "Is anyone here?" A sick feeling clenched his chest. He was far from home on an unknown world, with no way to find out where in the vast universe he was. Is this even Ix? The brisk wind was cold and sharp, but the open plain remained eerily quiet. Oppressive silence hung in the thin air. He had spent his life hearing the lullaby of the ocean, the songs of gulls, and the bustle of villagers. Here he saw nothing, no welcoming party, no signs of habitation. The world looked untouched, empty. If I've been stranded here, will anyone be able to find me? Thickening clouds concealed the sky, though he saw a distant blue sun through a break in the cover. He shivered again and wondered what he should do, where he should go. If he was going to be a duke, he had to learn to make decisions. A drizzle of sleet began to fall. The paintbrush of history has depicted Abelard Harkonnen in a most unfavorable light. Judged by the standards of his older half-brother, Baron Vladimir, and his own children, Glossu Rabban and Fade Rautha Rabban, Abelard was a different sort of man entirely. We must, however, assess the frequent descriptions of his weakness, incompetence, and foolhardy decisions in light of the ultimate failure of House Harkonnen. Though exiled to Lankavile and stripped of any real power, Abelard secured a victory unmatched by anyone else in his extended family. He learned how to be happy with his life. Landsraad Encyclopedia of Great Houses, post-Jihad edition. Though the Harkonnens were formidable foes in the arena of manipulations, subterfuge, and disinformation, the Bene Gesserit were undisputed masters. In order to achieve the next step in their grand breeding scheme, a plan that had been in place since 10 generations before the downfall of thinking machines, the sisterhood needed to find a fulcrum that would make the Baron bend to their will. It didn't take them long to figure out the weak point in House Harkonnen. Presenting herself as a new domestic servant on cold and blustery Lankavile, the young Bene Gesserit sister Margit Rashino Zia infiltrated the household of Abelard Harkonnen, the Baron's younger half-brother. Beautiful Margit, hand-selected by Kwisatz mother Anirul, had been trained in the ways of spying and ferreting out information, of connecting mismatched tidbits of data to construct a broader picture. She also knew 63 ways to kill a human being using nothing but her fingers. The sisterhood worked hard to maintain their appearance as brooding intellectuals, but they also had their commandos. Sister Margit was counted among their best. The lodge house of Abelard Harkonnen sat on a rugged spit of land that extended into deep water, bordered by narrow Tula Fjord. A fishing village surrounded the wooden mansion. Farms pushed inland into the thin and rocky valleys. But most of the planet's food supply came from the frigid sea. Lankavile's economy was based on the rich whale fur industry. Abelard lived at the base of dripping mountains, whose tops were rarely seen through the looming steel-gray clouds and lingering mist. The main house and surrounding village was the closest thing to a capital center this frontier world had to offer. Since strangers were rare, Margit took precautions not to be noticed. She stood taller than many of the stocky and muscular natives, so she disguised herself with a slight stoop. She dyed her honey-blonde hair dark and cut it thick and shaggy, a style favored by many of the villagers. With chemicals, she treated her smooth, pale skin to make it weathered and lend it a darker cast. She blended in, and everyone accepted her without a second glance. For a woman trained by the sisterhood, maintaining the sham was easy. Margit was only one of numerous Bene Gesserit spies dispatched to the widespread Harkonnen holdings, where they would surreptitiously scour any and all business records. The Baron had no reason to suspect such scrutiny at this time. He'd had very few dealings with the sisterhood. But if any of their female spies were discovered, the lean and vicious man would have no compunctions against torturing them for explanations. Luckily, Margot thought, any well-trained Bene Gesserit could stop her own heart long before inflicted pain could force her to reveal secrets. Traditionally, the Harkonnens were adept at manipulation and concealment. But Margot knew she would find the necessary incriminating evidence. Though other sisters had argued for digging closer to the heart of Harkonnen operations, Margot had concluded that Abelard would make the perfect patsy. The younger Harkonnen demi-brother had, after all, run the spice operations on Arrakis for 7 years. He must have some information. If anything needed to be hidden, the Baron would likely do it here, unexpectedly, right under Abelard's nose. Once the Bene Gesserit uncovered a few of the Harkonnens' mistakes and held proof of the Baron's financial indiscretions, they would have the blackmail weapon so desperately needed to advance their breeding program. Dressed as an indigenous villager in dyed wools and furs, Margot slipped into the rustic great house at the docks. The structure stood tall and was composed of massive wood, stained dark. Fireplaces in every room filled the air with resinous smoke, and glow globes, tuned to yellow-orange, did their best to approximate sunlight. Margot cleaned. She dusted. She helped with the cooking. She searched for financial records. 2 days in a row, the Baron's amiable half-brother greeted her, smiling, welcoming. He noticed nothing whatsoever amiss. A trusting sort, he seemed unconcerned for his own safety, and allowed locals and strangers to wander into the main rooms and guest quarters of his mansion, even close to his person. He had gray-blonde hair, long to his shoulders, and a seamed, ruddy face that was disarmed by a perpetual half-smile. It was said that he'd been a favorite of his father Dmitri, who had encouraged Abelard to take over the Harkonnen holdings. But Abelard had made so many bad choices, so many decisions based on people rather than business necessities. It had been his downfall. Wearing warm and prickly Lankavile clothing, Margot kept her gray-green eyes downcast and concealed behind lenses that made them appear brown. She could have made herself into a golden-haired beauty, and had, in fact, considered seducing Abelard and simply taking the information she needed. But she had decided against that plan. The man seemed unshakably devoted to his squat and wholesome native wife, Emmy Rabban, the mother of Glossu Rabban. He had fallen in love with her long ago on Lankavile, married her to the dismay of his father, and carried her with him from world to world during his chaotic career. Abelard seemed impervious to any feminine temptations but hers. Instead, Margot used simple charm and quiet innocence to gain access to written financial records, dusty ledgers, and inventory rooms. No one questioned her. In time, taking advantage of every surreptitious opportunity, she found what she needed. Using flash memorization techniques learned on Wallach 9, Margot scanned through stacks of etched Redulian crystals and absorbed columns of numbers, cargo manifests, lists of equipment decommissioned or placed into service, suspicious losses, storm damage. In nearby rooms, groups of women skinned and gutted fish, chopped herbs, peeled roots and sour fruits for steaming cauldrons of fish stew, which Abelard and his wife served for the entire household. They insisted on eating the same meals, at the same tables, as all of their workers. Margot finished her surreptitious scanning well before the meal call sounded throughout the rooms of the great house. Later, in private, while listening to a blustery storm outside, she reviewed the data in her mind and studied spice production records from Abelard's tenure on Arrakis and the Baron's current filings with Choam, along with the amounts of melange spirited away from Arrakis by various smuggler organizations. Normally, she would have set aside the data until entire teams of sisters had had a chance to analyze it. But Margot wanted to discover the answer herself. Pretending to sleep, she dived into the problem behind her eyelids with abandon, falling into a deep trance. The numbers had been masterfully manipulated. But after Margit stripped away the masks and thin screens,